You know, chums, one of the things that did not go unnoticed over in Australia were many of the mask slips that happened with Meghan Markle.
What a lot of people noticed during the recent visit to Australia is something that didn't make major headlines, but definitely didn't go unnoticed either. There were several moments where Meghan Markle appeared to react in ways that people online have been calling mask slips. Small expressions, brief reactions, and subtle body language shifts that, according to critics, revealed a very different side to the carefully controlled public image. And when you put all of those moments together, a bigger question starts to form. How much of what we see is real? And how much of it is carefully managed? Now, when it comes to Prince Harry, there's a very different energy that people tend to notice. Many observers say that he seems more relaxed in certain environments, especially when he is in direct contact with the public. There's a sense that he becomes more natural, more spontaneous, almost like he understands how to engage with crowds in a way that feels effortless. Some even compare it to the natural ability of Princess Diana, his mother, who was famously known for her emotional intelligence and her ability to connect with people on a deeply human level. Princess Diana had a unique way of interacting with the public. She didn't rely on scripts or formalities. Instead, she would smile, laugh, and speak to people in a way that felt genuine and unfiltered. Whether it was talking to patients in hospitals or interacting with children, she had a rare ability to make people feel seen and heard. That's something many people believe Harry inherited, not just genetically, but also through observation and lived experience during his upbringing. But when it comes to Meghan Markle, critics often describe a completely different dynamic. From the outside, she is seen as someone who comes from the entertainment industry, someone who understands cameras, production, timing, and presentation. And because of that background, some argue that she is far more aware of how moments are structured, how narratives are shaped, and how public appearances are perceived. That doesn't necessarily mean anything negative on its own, but it does create a different style of engagement compared to traditional royal interactions. During several public tours, including appearances in places like Australia, some critics have claimed that certain moments felt overly managed or staged, not necessarily in a dishonest way, but in a way that felt more controlled than natural. They argue that while Harry seems to respond instinctively to crowds and emotional environments, Meghan appears more calculated, carefully observing situations before engaging. Supporters, of course, see this differently. They argue that being prepared and aware of optics is simply professionalism, especially in high-pressure environments. At the same time, there is also a human element that cannot be ignored. Many of the places they visit during these tours include hospitals, charities, and communities facing real hardship. And in those environments, emotional responses are inevitable. Seeing children dealing with serious illness or families going through difficult circumstances can deeply affect anyone. Even critics acknowledge that these are not easy situations to navigate emotionally, regardless of status or background. However, what becomes controversial is how these moments are later presented publicly, because in the modern world of celebrity and media, every interaction has potential visibility. Every gesture can be captured, shared, and analyzed, and that creates a pressure that most ordinary people never experience. A single moment can define public perception, and that perception can shift very quickly. This is especially true in the world of high-profile celebrity culture, where public approval can change overnight. One comment, one misunderstanding, or one misinterpreted action can lead to intense backlash. The entertainment industry has shown this repeatedly, where even well-intentioned remarks on stage or in interviews can escalate into controversy. It's a fragile environment where image management becomes almost as important as the work itself. And this is where Meghan Markle's situation becomes even more complex. Critics argue that she operates in a space where public relations, branding, and personal identity are deeply intertwined. Every appearance is seen not just as a personal moment, but as part of a larger narrative. And because of that, even small decisions can carry significant weight in how she is perceived globally. One example that has been discussed is the way gifts and gestures during public tours are handled. During visits like the one in Australia, small tokens such as handmade items, local gifts, or personal contributions from communities are often presented. These gestures are usually meant as symbols of appreciation and connection, but what happens after those moments can sometimes become a point of debate. In some cases, critics have pointed out that certain gifts or acknowledgements were not later referenced or publicly highlighted. And in the world of public relations, that absence can be noticed. Because in modern celebrity culture, acknowledgement matters. A simple mention on social media, a thank you post, or even a small reference can significantly impact how a moment is remembered. Without that, people begin to form their own interpretations, which may or may not reflect reality. At the same time, supporters argue that not every personal moment needs to be turned into public content. They believe that private appreciation is just as valid as public acknowledgement, and that constantly documenting everything can take away from authenticity. This creates a tension between public expectation and personal boundaries, something that many public figures struggle with in the digital age. There is also the broader issue of staffing and support structures. Over time, reports have suggested changes in the size of their team, with fewer people now involved in managing day-to-day operations compared to earlier years. Critics see this as a sign of instability or internal challenges, while supporters argue that smaller teams allow for more control and privacy. Regardless of perspective, it does highlight how much responsibility now rests directly on the individuals themselves. And when people are left to manage high-pressure environments without extensive support systems, mistakes or misjudgments become more likely. That's not unique to Meghan Markle or Prince Harry. It's a common challenge in any high-profile career where expectations are constantly evolving. Meanwhile, Prince Harry continues to be viewed by many as someone who still carries emotional sensitivity into public spaces. His responses often feel instinctive rather than calculated, and that is something that resonates with people who value authenticity. But at the same time, that emotional openness can also make him more vulnerable in environments that are highly controlled and politically sensitive. What we are ultimately seeing is a contrast in approach. On one side, a structured, media-aware, highly managed public image. On the other, a more emotionally driven and instinctive way of engaging with the world. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong, but the tension between them becomes more visible as public attention increases. And that is what makes this situation so closely watched. Because it's not just about one tour, one visit, or one moment in Australia. It's about a long-term narrative that continues to evolve in real time. A narrative shaped by perception, media interpretation, and public reaction. At the end of the day, what people are really trying to understand is simple. How much of what we see is authentic and how much of it is shaped by expectation? And in a world where every moment can be recorded, shared, and analyzed, that question becomes harder to answer than ever before. Because sometimes the real story is not in what is said publicly, but in what is left unsaid. Now, I want to know your opinion. Do you think public figures today are more controlled by image than reality? Or is this just the price of fame in the modern world? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more deep, real, and unfiltered stories like this, subscribe to Fame Exposed. Because here, we don't just show you the surface, we break down what's really happening underneath it.